what are the things that customers need to think about from a regulatory perspective or from a compliance perspective when they're beginning their journeys?
So what they need to think about, in my opinion, is they need to think about obviously security, privacy, and where their data is moving. Many times on a cloud journey, one of the first things that customers are thinking about is ease of use. How can I get things done quickly? How can I save money, and so on and so forth? And if you jump into some particularly cloud or SaaS first integration technologies, you need to be very careful and scrutinize where your data is moving. So for example, Boomi's technology in partnership with OpenLegacy allows you to have the best of both worlds, where you can get a low code SaaS-based experience, but run your workloads where your applications reside. So if you create your own isolated environment, an example within AWS, and you want to connect your data between your AWS environment and maybe a legacy system within your own network, technologies like Boomi can give you the SaaS experience, but also run those workloads direct and data pipes directly between AWS and your legacy on-premises system. So if you're in a country like Germany, and you would like to make sure that that data resides only between your AWS environment and your on-premises environment, that is very important.
Zev, what about your perspective and from an OpenLegacy perspective, from a security and compliance side of things?
Sure. So I think there's a little bit of a misconception around compliance as an anchor, as something that stops you or prohibits you from doing things. And while there's an element of truth to that, I think more and more people start to think about compliance, first of all, for financial organizations as a core competency. That's really something that differentiates them from pure technology companies. So it's really important that they know how to do compliance better than anybody else. But also more and more we're seeing compliance as a driver for innovation, as long as you're doing it well. And with compliance, I mean, there's security and compliance, right? So the security is the more cautious, conservative part, where I might not want to do all kinds of different things that other people are doing. We're seeing that change a little bit. People are much more open to new ideas there, and also understanding that new ideas and new technologies are sometimes more secure, not less secure. But on the innovative side, I think we're no longer at the point where there's the scene from Lion King where the scene that the Lion King shows his young son the forest, and there's a part of the forest that's dark, and you don't go there. And a lot of time that used to be the mainframe. You don't go there. You don't touch that. That's everything there is dangerous and tricky and slow, and you're not going to do that. Compliance really doesn't allow you to do that anymore. When you talk about, customer information regulations, customer information lies within the mainframe. A lot of it, tons of it, sometimes most of it. You're not allowed to not touch it anymore. You're not allowed to disregard it or ignore it in any way anymore. So having a full understanding and the capabilities to reach every piece of data within your organization is now almost expected, not almost, it's expected, and it's legally expected and regulatory expected. So really that drives a lot of innovation, because now you have to do things in a way that enable you that flexibility, that you can create those connections and integrations into the data and reach wherever within your organization in a hybrid kind of a way. So I think the innovative part of regulation outweighs now the kind of more conservative part of it, or the prohibitive part of it.
Very good points. And Zev, also props for having a Lion King reference in there. That was excellent. Makes a lot of sense. But from that perspective, are you still running into, because I know that I am, are you still running into kind of more basic conversations around that forbidden forest kind of approach, where customers are still asking basic cloud security questions, almost as a defense to stop themselves from having to begin their cloud journey? And if so, how do you handle those kind of basic questions?
Absolutely. I mean, you still see that. I mean, you still see, people very cautious about opening up their, legacy systems to the cloud, for example. And there's a lot of kind of concerns around that. Usually the approach is more incremental. There are things that are just natively belong to the cloud. Client onboarding, you're not going to have an experience around client onboarding that's not online anymore. But also just providing best practices around the security and standardizing things. because if you have tens of protocols and maybe hundreds of ways of interacting with each component within your environment, that is by its nature not very secure, because the moment you lose some of that skills and know-how, nobody knows how to change anything anymore. And now you can, end up with vulnerabilities that you weren't even aware of. Whereas if you standardize on a few standard ways of accessing the data, of keeping the data, by definition, that becomes more secure, because the way you secure one thing is the way you secure everything else. So that standardization and the automation that comes with it, which is really an important conversation, the automation part, really brings more security, not less.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. And I think that ties back to earlier comments we made around educating customers around some of these basic concepts and continuing to do so. I think generally speaking, we've moved beyond some of those basic concerns around public cloud versus on-premises. However, it's still a ongoing conversation that we need to continue to have with our customers. And from us, as you guys both said, security is, we like to say security is job zero at AWS. It's one of the most important thing we focus on, certainly in all of our services and capabilities, and our partner relationships like with Boomi and OpenLegacy are based on that concept too. But Ed, I think you made a very important point about the ecosystem of partners. There are a lot of partners often involved here too. So coordinating across the board with all of those is a key concept here too. And I think you both made the point, I couldn't agree more, that within financial services, the compliance piece in and of itself it's a non-differentiating factor. It's something that, and with a lot of downside, it's something that you have to do, requirements that you need to make. But Zev, to your point, if you do them well, not only do you free up time and effort to do other things and focus on differentiation, but it can really remove a lot of friction in other processes, open transparency, create better data linkages, create better removing data from silos as well. So there are a lot of upsides to doing that well and moving toward a continuous compliance approach rather than doing them as a one-off kind of activity. All right, I think we've talked a little bit about this already, but I'd like to hear your perspectives. And Zev, let's stick with you. What role does integration specifically play in incremental modernization?
Sure. So I think integration is really a foundational technology, and really one of the first things you want to think about, especially if you're talking about a hybrid situation. I mean, by definition, hybrid means integration, right? You have different things running in different places. You need the integration component of it. And I think integration done well is really about containing complexity. What do I mean by that? I'll just give you an example from one of our customers, where they had a backend application that had a batch window. So during the nighttime, it would go down for the batch processing, and it's not accessible. If you provide an integration into that system as is, that's a horrible experience for everybody downstream, because now they need to figure out into their flows, well, is it this time or that time? Did the processing started? Is it, all of those kind of things. You really want to contain that complexity, and complexity can come in many different ways: protocols, behaviors, things like banks that used to work in a framework of branches, and now they move to branchless banks, but still a lot of their system have branches, in their applications. All of those complexities need to be contained and need to be dealt with so that you streamline the usage downstream. So that's where thinking about integration the right way. What are the granular units? Where do I want to stem the complexity of that specific legacy system? What do I need to flow downstream? How do I standardize on the right field names and the right data items and all of those kind of things is really foundational, because it's data flow at the end of the day, and these are data systems. Harking back to the beginning of this type of computing, these are data systems, no matter if they're on the cloud or on-prem or whatever they are. And integration is really all about the data flow. So that's why integration is extremely important, and you need to think about integration that supports your goals in terms of distributed computing, in terms of you want to move to microservice architectures from your legacy monolith. All of those kind of things really need to be accounted for. And I would even say, I think there's a Gartner statistic saying that 60% of any major software project is integration. I would ask, what's the other 40%? It's all integration, right? You're integrating and collecting data. So really, it's a foundational technology and maybe one of the biggest considerations you want to have.
So I was going to ask you, Zev, what some of the dangers of not considering integration, but I think you already covered that. But it sounds like you have a lot of experience in this area. Can you think of one or two examples of a project that's gone off the rails because a lack of integration or a lack of an integrated approach?
Yeah, absolutely. And you see that a lot where a decade into this idea of separating APIs by system, process, and experience APIs, the three-tier API concept. And one thing that people kind of maybe did not maybe underestimated is the importance of the system APIs and the quality of the system APIs. And what a lot of people did back in the days is just create tons of system APIs that are very, very closely attached to those legacy systems or the backend systems, whatever they are. And then they just created a situation where managing them one level, below that or above that, depends on your viewpoint, really became unmanageable. And really, everything started to kind of break down at that level. And then they had to go back and, rethink their system level APIs and maybe not do, microservices, maybe do macro services, maybe do, more complex services at that level. Maybe, tweak them a little bit, have more focus on the contracts of those low level APIs. So that's where we see a lot of people kind of struggling on day two. And not thinking from a API consumer standpoint, but rather, mistakenly thinking about it from, this is what I have on my legacy, so I'll just put out everything out there. So it really needs to be very deliberate. And we see that as a big thing to think about.
No, it makes sense. Absolutely. And what about you? What's the Boomi perspective on this?
So I think, again, integration is critical in a cloud modernization project, because if you look at what the cloud has introduced innovation, at an all-time high, and it continues to accelerate. If any mature business looks across their business, every department now has their own application or application suite of choice that is a best of breed cloud or SaaS-based application for that department. That is just a baseline at this point, let alone all the applications and cloud-based technologies that the individual employees are bringing into the organization. And you combine that with legacy technologies that we have been talking about that you may just need to continue to run your business. All of that requires a modern, nimble integration infrastructure and architecture to run your business. So not only, Zev, you mentioned the three-layered APIs, you cannot just think about an API-based approach nowadays. Yes, critically important. You want to look to be API first. I'm not going to evangelize against something like that. But with these hybrid landscapes out there today, you've got to consider event-based integration. You've got to consider API first. You have to consider all the different legacy ways of connecting, et cetera. Not only that, there's also not only those things, there's also the dimension of as you're incrementally bringing this your legacy business into a cloud-first modern infrastructure. I mentioned earlier about all of these individuals or smaller teams that can bring their own technologies. IT themselves in an organization cannot be the only ones handling all the integration scenarios within a company. You have to think about, we talked about compliance, governance, all the things for your enterprise that IT brings to the table and value the organization in these types of environments, but you also have to think about how can I embrace the line of business and citizens within my organization to help with incremental modernization and integrating these systems. So you should think about, okay, what low code integration tool sets can I look at that support all of the above in the enterprise and also support scale. So it's critically important to think through all of these things from an integration standpoint as you modernize and enable yourself to responsibly evolve your organization, and also pick an integration technologies that are looking around the sharp technology corners for the future to make sure that you're protected not only with your legacy assets that you have and bringing those into your environments, but also are modernizing and continue to move forward with all the future looking technologies that are coming our way.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Now, something you said, very interesting. I've been working with no code, low code technologies for a while, including in my prior role at Majesco. So big fan of them. I have run into concerns. I'm curious if you have as well, and how you address them around from engineering and IT, sometimes around the concept of the citizen developer. enabling non-engineers to develop solutions. Have you run into that? And if so, how do you kind of address those concerns?
I have, and we address them. We take a focus around the way we go at the market is our core customer or user base is an IT organization. It doesn't need to be some complex IT organization or hundreds of people. I don't want to give that impression, but we come at it in terms of providing the governance, role-based access controls, et cetera. We've lived through the days of point-to-point integrations and spaghetti code mess, even in a low-code environment that can create within your organization. And I think that's what IT worries about is just citizens getting out of control with developing a whole bunch of point-to-point integrations and then moving on with their lives and doing their core jobs within their line of business and leaving IT with a mess. So we provide all the tooling. We focus very heavily on bridging IT with a line of business and creating partnerships within our organizations. And our customers love us for that because we allow the best of all worlds. We let IT provide tenancy solutions, shared low code snippets and those types of things and share them, govern them, help the lines of business with some semblance of being responsible in these environments that allows IT to take ownership, but also share the responsibility of developing these things. So we're very unique in that way that it's not just about letting the citizens run wild within an organization, but allowing IT to help govern and take control and truly be a partner to the business.
Technology can generate a lot of buzzwords, and one we had mentioned already earlier is around AI, generative AI specifically. So Ed, let's stick with you for a sec. What role does AI play in all this across the board? It doesn't have to be generative, but what are your perspective on that?
So yeah, we've been working specifically with AWS on our AI and ML based technologies for quite some time now. So it is, you think of things like Copilot and next best action and those types of things. So from a Boomi perspective, we've been thinking about how can we accelerate the development and design of integrations and connectivity and automations across a company's landscape for a while now. We have things, we already have capabilities like the ML guided integrator, Boomi suggest for field mapping, suggest for filtering systems, et cetera. So we believe AI plays an important part of just streamlining the developers kind of and the developers actions, increasing developer productivity, et cetera. But not only that, with the introduction now of generative AI, ChatGPT, those types of technologies, we've made some recent announcements around Boomi AI and what we are doing to take things to the next level in partnership with AWS and OpenLegacy to bring three pillars of AI to the forefront, particularly for integration. First is the design, auto-generating integrations or helping customers choose recipes that are accurate and tested, et cetera, to bring into their environments to connect SaaS to SaaS, SaaS to on-prem, et cetera, type systems or cloud-based integrations, and also auto-generate them based on the 20,000 plus customers that we have in our environment and all of the integration behavior that we have learned over time based on having that. But not only, when you think about, that's what a lot of folks are doing already. So that's table stakes that integration vendors or middleware vendors should be thinking about. But when you think about integrating systems, what everybody forgets is it's not just about developing and getting things into production quickly.
So I think I parse it in from the customer perspective in two categories or two things. First is, all the vendors are now, because AI is a buzzword, but it's a very useful technology. It's not just a buzzword. There's a lot of buzz, but it's very useful. So of course, if I'm a customer, I'm expecting all of my vendors to start introducing AI features. Now, AI features, if done right, are not AI features, are just better experiences on the different products that I'm using. And I know Boomi is doing really exciting things. And the experience just becomes easier and simpler and almost magical in a way. But that's one category. The other category is what I, as a customer, as an enterprise customer, what am I doing with an AI strategy, the things that I'm implementing. And then I think there are two really important components. First of all is access to data. AI needs a lot of data. The more data, the better the AI can be. So access, easy way to get access to the data, to reconfigure that access, to basically have a full landscape of the data within the organization to make it available and consumable to the AI component. That's one thing. And the other thing is AI can actually do things. So automation becomes critical. So, Ed talked about the citizen developer. What if the citizen developer is actually an AI developer? The citizen is actually an AI trying to do things. That's not far-fetched. That's actually something that can and does happen. Maybe not in enterprises at this point, but will come. So providing level of automations around creating those integration, around monitoring them, around all of those different activities becomes really important because that's just another, AI have eyes to see the data, and then they have hands and fingers to actually do and make it actionable. These are the kind of things that I think customers are starting to think about on that part of the AI kind of divide on the strategy part of the AI strategy versus just the features that they're going to get, and and the vendors are working very hard to provide them. So that's kind of the way we look at it.
How can I have forgotten, Zev, the applied use case of Boomi and OpenLegacy technology together, that customers can connect legacy systems with OpenAI technologies to actually move and orchestrate that data. I got too caught up in talking about what we are doing from a vendor and adding AI into our technologies, but a core value of our partnership together really allows customers to connect these and leverage legacy data they may have in their organization in modern AI technologies.
And by the way, that integrated solution, shameless plug for the AWS Marketplace or SaaS Marketplace, is available as an integrated solution on the AWS Marketplace.
Yes.